Hey sports fans, it's Austin Schindel, the Xfinity Sports Guy here with Ariel Helwani of MMAfighting.com. Ariel, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Austin. Thank you.
All right, so UFC 146, huge fight tomorrow, Junior Dos Santos versus Frank Mir. Tell everyone why they should order this fight.
Well, there's several reasons why I should order this fight. First off, it's for the UFC heavyweight title, so that in itself is very exciting. You know, in boxing, which is kind of the main competitor for the UFC and mixed martial arts, the heavyweight title has sort of fallen on hard times. And Junior Dos Santos is one of the guys who can really hold the belt for a long time. You know, an interesting fact is that no UFC heavyweight champion has held the belt for more than 2 title defenses. This will be his first title defense, and a lot of people think that he'll be able to hold on to it for at least a couple of years. And he's one of the best boxers, one of the best strikers, not only in the heavyweight division but in all of MMA. And he's facing arguably the best BJJ heavyweight in MMA. And what I mean by BJJ is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Frank Mir is one of the best on the ground, so it's kind of an interesting styles clash between a guy who's great on his feet against a guy who's great on the ground. And the interesting thing about this pay-per-view is that all 5 pay-per-view fights are heavyweight fights, and that is a first for the UFC. They've never had a card with just all one weight class showcased. And to see 10 of the best heavyweights compete on Saturday night is a pretty cool thing.
So you were talking about Junior Dos Santos' striking ability, which has to be the best heavyweight striker out there. And Frank Mir's 5 losses, they've all come from being up and just getting struck. So how is Frank Mir going to have to combat that style and get the fight to the ground?
Well, he's going to have to keep the fight close. You know, he said that he wants to clinch with Junior Dos Santos. Of course, Dos Santos is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. We just haven't seen anyone try to take him to the ground, or they kind of get in the cage with him like Shane Carwin did, and then they, for whatever reason, sort of forget about their game plan of trying to take the fight to the ground and stand and trade with him, which is obviously not the smartest thing to do. So, Frank Mir says he wants to take the fight to the ground. Frank Mir says that he wants to submit him. Obviously, that's easier said than done, but if he wants to do so, he's going to have to keep the fight close, get in the clinch, make this a dirty fight, and try to shoot on him and take him down, and then we'll really see how good JDS's ground game is. He says he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. We all believe him, but we just haven't seen him have to use it in a fight. I think it's going to be very hard for Frank Mir to get him down. JDS is such a strong, such a quick heavyweight, and I think he's going to have a hard time getting the fight to where he wants it to be.
After 2 straight victories, Frank Mir had mentioned that he might want it to go down to the light heavyweight division, but he has not done so yet. Do you think that might be a smart move, or do you think that that's just something that was in passing and will never really come to fruition?
Yeah, I just think that's something that he said. Frank Mir is a guy who has kind of ballooned up to 260 pounds. And when I say ballooned, I don't mean that in a negative way. He's actually a very lean 260 pounds. And, he added a lot of muscle when he was going through his little feud with Brock Lesnar. And that was he was a little too big back then. Now he's a lot, he's a lot more cut. He's a lot leaner. He's a lot quicker on his feet. And that being said, it's going to be very hard for him to get down to 205. So, I mean, he's looked very good. He got this title shot because Alistair Overeem, who was originally supposed to fight Junior Dos Santos on Saturday night, failed his pre-fight drug test. Mir was fighting in the co-main event against Cain Velasquez. They bumped him up. He's on the longest winning streak, the most impressive winning streak, I should say, in the heavyweight division, so it makes sense. And at this point, I don't see him going down to 205 ever. Another interesting thing is, after Tito Ortiz retires, on July 7th, that will most likely be his last fight. Frank Mir will be sort of the longest tenured UFC fighter right now on the roster. So he's been there a long time, always as a heavyweight, and I expect him to remain a heavyweight.
Like you said, Overeem was disqualified. Do you think that changes anything with the way Dos Santos looks at the fight? Do you think there's any possibility he was talking a little trash? Do you think he may be taking him for granted a little bit?
No, not at all. I mean, in fact, even though Dos Santos doesn't say this and won't agree with this, I almost feel like this fight's a little more personal for him because Frank Mir defeated Junior Dos Santos' mentor, coach, and friend, Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, twice now. He knocked him out, first man to knock him out. That was at UFC 92. And then he was the first man to submit him at UFC 140, and he didn't just submit him, he broke his arm because Big Nog didn't tap. So I feel like he's kind of fighting to sort of avenge those losses for his mentor. And he says it's not personal, but he said some things. Dos Santos is a very sort of respectful and professional guy, but he said that Frank Mir isn't a man and that he wilts under pressure and all this stuff. So we've seen a bit of a different side out of him. And I think if it wasn't someone like Frank Mir, if it wasn't someone that he had this connection to, maybe it would have been a bummer. But I think Dos Santos is just looking to sort of cement his place as the greatest heavyweight, and he wants to defend his title. And it kind of works out that Frank just beat his mentor, so I think that gives him a little extra motivation.
Right. When you spoke to Dos Santos, he mentioned that give him 3 months, he can go fight anybody in the world, including the Klitschko brothers. Do you honestly believe that's true, knowing his incredible striking background?
No. The Klitschko brothers and anyone who's doing, boxing has been doing this, for 20, 30 years. Dos Santos is a mixed martial artist, and yes, he does have a background in boxing. His base is boxing, but it's a much different sport. MMA boxing is different than boxing. MMA wrestling is different than just pure amateur wrestling. So, I credit him for being so confident in his skills. Could he, train in boxing, take a fight in 3 months against some, young up-and-comer? Sure. But against the Klitschkos, it'll take a lot of time, focusing. That's what they do. They don't do anything else. They
Right.
just train with these two things. So I think that's it's a bit of a stretch to say that you can hang with the Klitschkos after just 3 months of training pure boxing.
If Frank Mir wins, this will be his third different time he holds the heavyweight title. That'll be the first time that anybody's ever done that. If Frank Mir wins this fight, is he a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can make a case for him being a Hall of Famer right now. This has become a sort of hot topic in MMA with Brock Lesnar retiring. I said right after his fight that I think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Randy Couture said earlier this week that Brock deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Sort of a controversial topic. I'd like to see the UFC start to take their Hall of Fame a little more seriously, make it sort of an annual thing like they do in other sports and even in professional wrestling. But right now it seems like it's kind of just sort of forgotten about. That being said, I think you can make a very, very strong case for Frank Mir being a Hall of Famer now. If he wins on Saturday night, without a doubt, he's a Hall of Famer.
Right. So, all right, we'll leave with this prediction, round, and is there a knockout?
Well, believe it or not, I'm actually going to go with a decision victory for Junior Dos Santos. I think it's going to be hard. Frank Mir takes a good punch. Contrary to what Dos Santos said about him, I don't really think he wilts under the pressure. Nogueira did tag him a couple times in the first round. In the early stages of their fight at UFC 140, he was able to rebound and, of course, submit Nogueira moments later. But I don't know, for some reason, I don't know if it's because I just saw the Daniel Cormier versus Josh Barnett fight last weekend in Strikeforce that went the distance. For some reason, I'm expecting another a 5-round fight dominated by Dos Santos. I think he wins every round. I think he dominates this fight on the feet for the most part. It may go to the ground once or twice, and he won't be in trouble there. But I just think that Dos Santos right now is on a whole other level than Frank Mir.
All right, well, thank you, Ariel, for your time. I'm sure you'll be there tomorrow night enjoying the fight ringside. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And you can see all our coverage over at MMAfighting.com for the fight.
Great.